Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this North West Area Planning Committee meeting held on 30th of March 22. My name is Councillor Maddie Thompson, and I'm the chairman of this committee. Before we commence the business of the meeting, there are a few housekeeping issues to run through. Members, we're now working with the setup as agreed at council, and most aspects are back to the pre-COVID normal. However, some people will choose to wear a mask, nobody is actually, and or take other measures, and I'll just ask you to respect that, please. We are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. When invited to speak, please turn on your microphone and speak clearly, referencing a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers. Please keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible and ensure your microphones remain off when not speaking, as this is important for the live streaming to be heard clearly. Finally, can I draw your attention to the notices on the agenda papers regarding the different levels within the chamber, and advise that the fire exit is the door behind this top table. Members, may I also draw your attention to the members' update with further information on item 5 on the agenda. It is quite lengthy, so if anyone would like a minute to read it, please let me know. Item 2 is apologies for absence. Please, Miss Bird, I know we've had one.
Yes, Chairman, thank you very much. Apologies received from Councillor Siddle. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. That's apologies from Councillor Siddle. Right, item 3 is minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of February, found on pages 7 to 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. May I take them as read, members? Okay. I so move. Do I have a second? Right, seconded by, let's say, Councillor Keys. And did everyone agree? Any dissent? Any corrections? Right, thank you very much. Okay, item 4, declarations of interest. I'm afraid I have to read all this. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests, or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. And members are reminded they're also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise through the meeting. Any takers, please? Councillor Durham?
Thank you, Chairman. A non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council who are statutory consultees in relation to things like highways, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chairman. A non-pecuniary as a member of Essex County Council who are consultees. Thank you.
So, same. Thank you very much. Right, we do have 3 public participants. This next item, item 5, which you will find on pages 13 to 23, I believe. This is looking at land north of 48 Woodrolfe Road, Tollesbury. So I'm going to ask for the officer presentation, please, and then we'll have the public participants and we'll move on from there. Thank you. Ms. Cassidy.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. So just before I start my presentation, just to say that since the publication of the members' update, another 4 letters of support have been received. They do not raise any new points of consideration from those already summarised and addressed within the officer's report and the members' update. So the site is located on the northern side of Woodrolfe Road, outside the settlement boundary of Tollesbury. The site is an open, undeveloped grassland, bounded by hedgerows to the north, east and south. The western boundary is demarcated by a dense wooded area, which separates the field from the developed settlement of the village. The current proposal relates to the construction of 29 residential properties to provide sheltered accommodation for people over 60 years of age, including a community hub building and associated landscaping and infrastructure. The development would be accessed off of Woodrolfe Road here. The proposed dwellings will be fronting onto the proposed estate road and the communal garden here. An attenuation basin is proposed along the western boundary. The community hub is adjacent to the attenuation basin. This is where the woodland is, and a footpath is proposed to be created here. Also, the document submitted with the application suggests that the proposed development would incorporate dementia-friendly design principles. In terms of parking, a total of 44 parking spaces are proposed. And with regards to outdoor amenity space, all properties would have access to verandas or balconies. But due to the very nature of the proposed development, no private gardens in their typical domestic form are proposed, as you can see on the plan. This plan shows the position of the proposed affordable rent units, which are those marked in red. This is the soft landscaping overview. And this is the tree layout overview. There is a pumping station proposed here, but yeah, this is not shown on that plan. This is a closer view of the proposed courtyard and communal open space. And the following are the elevations and floor plans of the dwellings proposed. So this is 1 and 2. 3 and 4, which are semis. 5 to 7, a small terrace of bungalows. This is 8 to 12, part 2-story, part single-story. 13 and 14, again a pair of semis with parking in between. This is another row, 15 to 20, a small block of flats, 2-story, and then the rest is bungalows. 21 and 22. 23 and 24. These properties are on the top to the north of the development. Again, to the north part of the development, another terrace, and these are, I think, these are the final ones. These are the elevations of the proposed community building adjacent to the attenuation bases and the wetland area. These are some technical drawings, the fire tender swept path analysis and the refuse swept path analysis, also including details of visibility displays and the proposed pedestrian access, which is through here. These again are some technical drawings showing the boundary between the application site and the adjacent dwelling to the west. Some works to the boundary are proposed to protect from subsidy, and this is what these plans show. And these are some photographs of the site and of the surrounding area. These are properties to the south. This is the adjacent dwelling to the west, and this is the public car park to the east. And these are some views from Woodrolfe Road. So the proposed development has been assessed against the planning policies, and it has taken into consideration all the material planning considerations, including previous permissions and appeals, including the appeal decision in relation to application 21/00075/OUTM, relating to a development involving the erection of 232 dwellings to form phase 2 of the previously approved retirement community in Burnham on Crowds. Which was recently allowed. The proposed development is to provide residential sheltered accommodation for older persons. The council, as we know, cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore the tilted balance is engaged. As such, when the most important policies of the plan are out of date, permission should be granted unless any adverse impact of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the MPPF when taken as a whole. The applicant states that the proposed development would provide a 100% affordable sheltered housing scheme for older persons. Assessing the development against the affordable housing criteria, it is concluded that the applicant has not provided sufficient evidence to demonstrate that the development would be able to meet the criteria of affordable housing in terms of the affordable sales element, which constitute 86.2% of the overall scheme. Furthermore, it has not been demonstrated that the development would be able to provide affordable housing to meet the needs of those that cannot be met by the market within the district. Therefore, it is considered the proposal would constitute accommodation based on aspirational lifestyle rather than actual need. Even if the necessary submissions were able to demonstrate that the proposal constitutes affordable housing in accordance with the NPPF, and albeit no objection is raised for the provision of affordable housing per se, officers consider that the submitted evidence is lacking in clarity and has not been able to demonstrate that there is a need of this quantum of this very particular type of development. Furthermore, for a scheme to be considered as a rural exception scheme, as this is outside the settlement, and be policy compliant, it would be required to provide affordable housing in accordance with the required tenure split, which is 75 affordable rent, 25 affordable sales, and this development does not propose, as proposed, does not comply with this requirement. The development would have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area due to the quantum of development, the layout, the grain, scale, partial loss of the woodland on the southwestern part, and design of some of the dwellings proposed. Although on balance, some sustainability credentials are recognized in terms of accessibility to local amenities and public transport and biodiversity net gain, it is considered that it has not been demonstrated that the overall adverse impact identified would be able to be outweighed by the benefits arising from the proposed development. Therefore, the development is considered unacceptable when assessed against the correct test of the NPPF, and contrary to policy to the LDP and the NPPF when taken as a whole. For these reasons, officers recommend refusal of the application for the reasons stated on page 55 of the agenda. Just wanted to advise you that a letter from the applicant has been received since the publication of the report, requesting the application to be deferred to the next committee meeting in order to incorporate some amendments to the proposed development. Obviously, this is Councillor's gift to decide. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lake? So we'll move on to our public speakers. We'll have the standard order, please. So there's no one speaking as an objector. We have a supporter, Mr. Hope. If you'd care to come forward, please. Find a chair, make yourself comfortable. Please use the microphone. Following Mr. Hope will be Mr. Plater, the Parish Council Chairman, and then Ms. Tidswell, who will speak for the applicant. Right, Mr. Hope, you have precisely 2 minutes, and I am very precise. Please use microphone so that the people on the streaming can hear you, and we start timing when you start speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks for this opportunity to speak in favour of the proposed Lewis and Scott development. My name is Pete Hope and I'm a resident of Tollesbury. My wife and I live on the second floor of Woodrolfe Park Flats, which is to the east of the development, not far from the proposed development. There are 52 flats in the block, many occupied by people who are retired, but as we age, the stairs will become an issue. UK National Office of Statistics estimate the total population of Tollesbury around 2,855. Of that, 945 people are over 60. On that stat alone, I would suggest it's unrealistic to say that there's no need for this kind of development in Tollesbury. To my knowledge, no significant survey has actually been done by the council to ascertain the housing needs of this population. Tonight, I speak for myself, approaching 70, and my closest friends in the village who are both in their mid-70s. They would have been here tonight in support of the development, but health issues prevent their attendance. My friend is trying to cope with the effects of his dementia, anxiety, depression, insomnia, all taking a toll on him and his wife's life. The worry of the upkeep of the house and garden increases that burden. This development would mean they could stay in the village close to friends and their network of support. There isn't an appropriate alternative for them. It's as simple as that. I know of other retired people who've had to move out of the village. They too had no options other than to move. Our circumstances are less dire. But as we age, we will be less mobile at best. We will be unable to afford anything appropriate, even with any realised equity. The fact we are having this conversation shows how skewed the property market is, and the seemingly predetermined favour towards profitable housing that doesn't reflect or incorporate the very real needs of local people. I'd like to commend the work of local councils and district councils. They put a lot of time and effort into making our villages, towns better places to live. But I sincerely urge you not to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfectly timed, if I may say so. Right, Mr. Plater, please, if you could come forward. Pick a chair, any chair. Again, you have 2 minutes precisely, and we'll start timing when you begin to speak. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, councillors, Simon Plater, Chairman, Tollesbury Parish Council and Tollesbury Neighbourhood Plan Group, and founder member of Tollesbury Climate Change Partnership, which is a new community benevolent society with over 100 members. The Parish Council view is that this proposed development on this site to the western edge outside the settlement boundary is strategically wrong. We believe that the maritime element of the village has not been fully addressed in this application. In particular, we have considerable concern at the position of the site and its potential significance of tidal flooding. During the course of the planning process last October, the Environment Agency issued new guidelines estimating that sea level will rise due to climate change to a minimum of 1.2 metres at least by 2125 and will continue to rise. The EEA have also addressed the increasing frequency of tidal surges. They have publicly announced that the 1 in 100 sea event is becoming an annual event, and the prediction relates to the next 30-year period. We in Tollesbury now monitor all unusual tide events, and the last one being on the 21st of February. Surge tides are more frequent, and the tide is becoming higher. We can also understand that there will be a breach sooner or later. Given the above, Tollesbury Parish Council think it would be extremely reckless to ignore the information, considering the projected lifespan of these units, 60 to 100 years. Finally, we would fully support the officer's report, which is detailed, comprehensive and robust, and ask the councillors to follow the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, but another perfect timing. Thank you, Mr. Plater. And last but not least, Ms. Sidswell, who is speaking for the company, the applicant company. Again, same for you, 2 minutes precisely from when you start to speak.
Hello everyone, I'm Helen Tidswell. I'm one of the founders of Lewis and Scott. First and foremost, I'd like to say that we are a purpose-led organisation. There is a critical shortage of affordable homes for older people, as Mr. Hope has said. It's a national problem, but it's particularly acute in Malden. There's a rapidly ageing population, and there have been no affordable homes built in the district since they were made a priority in 2017, not for older people. People are living in properties that are unsafe, hard to manage and expensive to heat. For the majority, the prospect of downsizing is not realistic. What is available is too expensive, is too far away, forcing people to choose between their health and staying close to their friends and their family. We started the company based on our own experience of trying to help family members to downsize. It was very, very difficult. Our approach is very, very simple. We design and build homes that are local, affordable and beautiful. Set in 4 acres of gardens, Salt Meadows was designed in partnership with the University of Stirling. They're a world-leading expert in dementia design, which encompasses everything leading up to dementia. That's loss of sight, mobility, hearing. These homes will help people to remain independent for longer, and it will protect their long-term health, and we're ready to build now. There are no technical objections to the site, including flooding. It has a clean bill of health on every single aspect. It was approved for older persons housing in the recent call for sites, and it is 100% affordable according to the definition of the NPPF. Now, you know my objections to the report. I've shared that. I'm not going to go back to that. What you will also know through the update is we've increased our offer to 9 affordable rent units, which just takes us above the 40% threshold. So it's now affordable no matter how you view it. It's not a rural exception scheme. This has been a labour of love. We ask you to think about the people in need. There's an opportunity here to do something that will put Malden on the map. It needs to happen. It needs to happen now. People are depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Got to stop you there. Right, members. Well, we have been asked to defer. I'm not entirely sure what we would gain by that. Sorry, Councillor Morley, could you possibly turn that microphone off behind you? Or Councillor White, thank you. Anybody really? Anybody at all? So I'm actually going to ask Mr. Lee what would change, what could potentially change significantly between now and next time, given that we've been provided with a lot of the information.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the applicant, I think probably a lot of members have seen a lot of correspondence about this, as you know, has raised a number of concerns in relation to the report, some of which are just statements of they don't, there's concerns without any real detail. Obviously, their point around like 100% affordable and the definition of MPO is obviously drilled into a lot of detail in the officer's report, where it explains that the value they're coming up with and the suggested reduction is about market and doesn't take into account the natural reduction that there is in older people's housing, etc. I think the big issue is, and Mr. Tash-Toglu spent a long time doing a presentation, so I will try and deal with this very quickly because no one needs to hear my voice more than they have to. But the point is that, the council considers that there is harm, or the LPA does, in relation to the character and appearance of the area, and then it comes down to the balancing exercise that members are fully aware of. In accordance with development plans, material consideration indicate otherwise. We haven't got a 5-year land supply, so it brings in the tilted balance, and taking into account the concerns and lack of evidence, and some of the issues we've got, the LPA has come to the recommendation that the proposed development, due to the impact on the character of the area, for want of a better phrase, the harm does significantly outweigh the benefits. In relation to a deferral, obviously the applicant has stated very late in the day they would potentially increase the units to 9. While that would make it policy compliant, for want of a better phrase, in relation to the traditional element of affordable housing, it wouldn't overcome the LPA's concerns in relation to the other percentage, which is which they're trying to argue affordable, where we have concerns that whether it actually in the big picture does meet the definition, also doesn't necessarily evidence that there is, back up the argument that there is the need for this very specific type of offer. There's a lot of quite high level statements, and the person support the I think Mr. Hope stated, we haven't got a report that says what housing specifically is needed for Tollesbury, and to answer that is correct. We have policies for the district, and the point is that it's the applicant's gift to persuade us that there is a material consideration that means we should go against our policy. And basis, as Ms. Tash-Toglu's report explains, we've looked at the evidence they've provided and we don't consider it gives us a level of comfort that there is. We've got very little evidence about what they would be looking to change apart from that one figure. We've had long conversations about the quantum of development, the way it sits and relates in the site, and while there have been some minor changes, these have been very limited, and the applicant has been shown limited evidence of willing to move on that. So I am unclear on what would significantly change if members were to defer it and seek amendments, or as in what those amendments would and how that would change the officer's recommendation. There is no requirement for us to defer an application. There is no requirement for us to accept amendments. But when it comes to obviously deferral, it's within the gift of members. So I'll pass it back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I've got 3 members who wish to speak. So I will open the discussion now. I invite you to put any questions or make any comments you have on the report, including anything about this potential deferral, which we can bring forward at any time, but it has to be before we put any other proposal on the table, really. So I have Councillors Durham, Fleming, Keys, Stevens and Morgan. Oh, and Morley.
I think we should go for ward member. Should go first.
I've been rather moving away from that since we're all here to represent the whole district, and besides, Councillor Stevens might want to hear what everybody else has got to say. And then she's fully armed. So I did catch Councillor Durham caught my eye first, so we'll go with him. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. It's nice to know I caught your eye. Chairman, just putting the request for a deferral aside, because I'm dubious actually whether that is going to achieve anything. Can I ask Mr. Lee, ignoring the discrepancy with the affordable housing element and the unsubstantiated need, if that was clarified to our satisfaction that it was fully policy compliant, etc., given our very precarious 5-year land supply or lack of, would the tilted balance make it much more in favour? I'm just mindful of our appeal record, which is pretty, well, it's not great at the moment, and whether the tilted balance, if all those other elements were tidied up, would make a substantial difference. And in terms of the demand, I think that the thing that we should take into account is, as each year goes by and the population ages, the demand is going to rise exponentially. So taking the need and demand now is not necessarily as relevant as it might be in 5 or 10 years or 20 years time. That's a comment.
To you, Chairman, I think there's a couple of points in relation to that. Obviously, it hasn't been assessed if this was, 100% affordable scheme in traditional terms, or if we were to consider that there was that evidence. But this is quite obviously throw back slightly, as members are aware. Outline permission for, I think, 24 units was granted at appeal. A subsequent application for that development was submitted and refused by the committee, and an appeal was dismissed, partly in relation to the coverage of the site. And as you can see, obviously it's quite a large amount the site isn't being built on. This actually adds a level of development above this, as in its 29 units, and once again is quite a concentrated, intense development. So the actual impact on the character of the area is considered to be significant. And I think if you can go back to the presentation, the actual location of the way the layout is, of the development you've got there. As you can see there, it personally, from my professional opinion, it sits poorly with the wider area. It doesn't really interrelate to it. It is the tilted balance. It starts in favour of the applicant, for want of a better phrase, in favour of development. That does not mean we should be approving everything. It sounds difficult. If you were to look at it purely on numbers, we actually have quite a good success rate for dwellings, even though we haven't got a 5-year land supply. But it's because it's making that informed, educated, balancing process, taking into account all the different material considerations. We are in a significantly shortfall, so it is a balancing exercise. Officers have come to a recommendation based on our professional opinion. Obviously it's in members' gift to come differently. What I'd only say in relation to Councillor Dunst's final point about the numbers, one of the issues is that if it's going to be affordable housing in the terms and the discount sales, and we're looking to put on caps in relation to either income that is an appropriate one, and potentially also including a equity left effect from sale of properties, taking into account the evidence from our LHNA, which shows how many people in fairly valuable, high value properties, how many people own properties across the district. We don't have evidence necessarily that we actually have a quantum of people within the district that actually could be able to take those properties. So while you're saying people are getting older, if there were caps on the ability to access these properties that actually then preclude the people of Malden, because our LHA shows that there's generally a high percentage of ownership, even if there is a cascade system, it would end up with it being aimed at people outside the district. And this is one of the evidence we don't have one of the issues. We don't consider we have the evidence, feel comfortable that we can definitely say it will be going to the residents of Malden going forward if an appropriate cap that we feel comfortable is imposed, because the cap also, as the report says, that the applicant is looking at, we think is a relatively generous one, which doesn't meet the needs of people that are unable to access the market themselves.
I'll just come back on that. Just one. Did you say, my words mixed up, that there had been a previous approval on this same site? There has.
Yeah, so 24 units, but then the scheme that we just showed for in an L shape was refused.
Right, but the principle of development on this site has already been established.
it's that there's the permission's expired, so it's not established as in there is an extant permission, but it has been found to be acceptable.
Right.
But I think the idea is that it would not. I think you've got when you look at if you've got one that shows the relationship with the whole site better. I think
No, that's
you know,
fine.
yeah, you can see what it is. There's a very intense level of development when you consider the size of the site, and that's what we're talking about is the impact on the character of the area. And if, for example, it was a lower quantum of development, it had a different relationship layout, it may be a different issue. And if, as the report says, it's not the fact that there wants to be houses on this site that we're objecting to. What we're objecting to is the specifics of this quantum of development, its layout, this impact on the character of the area, which is the harm.
Previously,
Yep.
the site has been agreed as being acceptable in terms of sustainability, flood risk, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Correct.
So then,
okay,
but I said like,
Okay.
but the 29 was
Right, Councillor Fleming, what's next?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, thank you. That's just what I was looking for, was the planning history for the site. It was sort of missing. I thought that I'd just couldn't find it. So that's quite helpful to know that. So I just wanted to ask about the pumping station, just to be clear, is that for what sort of flows? Is that for sewage, grey waste?
Yes, please.
We don't have the details of that. We know that there is one potentially that is going to be located within the site. There's going to be a need, but the full details of that have not been submitted.
For surface
For the
water?
pumping station, yeah, it would be sewage. Yeah,
Or-
yes. Yeah.
For surface water. Okay, good. And then you referenced evidence. What can you give us an example? I know this is quite difficult to answer, of what the applicant could have provided in terms of evidence.
I can, sorry, through you, Chairman, I can only say what as officers we have had in terms of like the evidence of the council to rely on. So we have the local housing needs assessment to rely on. This is the latest document that shows the need in terms of housing. Technically, I mean, obviously, I'm not an expert on that, but what we would expect, it would be an assessment of, given that they target the Tollesbury village, it would be a survey, well, Tollesbury village to confirm, but then it's hard because there is this difference between demand and need. As an authority, we have identified through our LDP what our need is in terms of housing and in terms of affordable housing. Showing demand is not the same, it's more like what people would want. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is a need for this particular thing. So it's, yeah. But again, it's not for us, it's the onus of proof is with the applicant to demonstrate that.
Yeah. Chair, just a little bit further on that, there's a lot of, I would say, for want of a better phrase, assumptions of high level, data, and then just extrapolating that down on assumptions that if you put this through this equation, it will give you an accurate fact where, surveys, etc., to actually be able to evidence that this is correct rather than assumptions because, especially as, it does, some of it is going against what LLHNA states and things. So, yeah, that's the sort of thing that we would expect to have much more accurate and bespoke evidence for something like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got you, Councillor Keys. Can I just ask about parking? Because I can't actually see this very clearly. What does it meet the parking standards? I'm assuming it does. 44.
Yeah. And again, for those schemes that they are for retirement accommodation, it's like on base. But yeah, it's bespoke. So we have to consider how much the need would be. They are 44 proposed, and 29 houses. A minimum of one will be provided per dwelling.
Actually, there's no public transport down there. Have to be
It's about-
fairly fit to walk up.
Yeah, it's the nearest one is about slightly less than half a mile away from the site.
Okay, thank you for that. I apologise, Councillor Keys.
No,
You're on.
my next, right. Personally, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think I'd certainly encourage that in certainly my ward, rather than some of the developments that we are seeing. Now, could we go into it? Because they say it's too highly dense, but being that is what the older generation likes, so they can see people and meet people. Now, planning permission's already passed on this place. I sat in here a couple of months ago, and the Linebrook Way, they were talking about the Linebrook Way Phase 4 before they built any affordable bungalows. How far away from that? I know that's in our 5-year or lack of 5-year land supply. Now, would this enhance that? Because they're saying they've built all these houses at Linebrook, but there is no affordable and no bungalows in the first 3 phases. Is that right? Do you remember hearing that? They're all up in arms. It was going to be on the last phase. And it's not happened. So we haven't got. Sorry, Matt, go on.
I've got no idea, to be honest, Chairman. Questions like that you need to give us in advance. We can't. We can't give you questions on how delivery rates are off the cuff, unfortunately. Thank you, Chairman.
No, well, I'm convinced that's what I heard, that it was on phase 4 of Linebrook Way before we got any bungalows.
I've certainly heard it in reference to some of North Heybridge Garden suburb. I know it is true that as long as we get the total number by the end of the final phase.
But this can be years and years and years ahead.
Yeah, sometimes they're not there yet and not coming in the current
I'm
phases.
living in the area all my life. I know the site well, and I'm struggling to find why we shouldn't be doing this sort of thing in a lot of the outer villages. I'm really struggling, but I'm willing to put this out to my fellow ward members.
Okay. I'll come to you, Councillor White. Councillor Stevens, are you ready to speak? And then I'll work my way around everyone.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're still on questions, actually. So I hear your opinion, but I've got some questions, if I may, first of all.
Of course.
Thank you. I'm confused about the crossing outside the development along Woodrolfe Road. So there's something in the report about a pavement that will be extended within the site down towards the marina. That's fine. But for people walking up to the village, there isn't a pavement on the same side of the road as the development. You would have to cross the road. Bearing in mind that this site sits between the industrial estate and the village, that does worry me, that there are huge transporters. I'm not talking about a couple of sort of delivery vans. We're talking transporters, HGVs, come down that road regularly all the time. Am I right in thinking there's no pelican crossing, zebra crossing, whatever? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chairman. What is proposed, as you've said, is the extension of the footpath on both sides. But at the moment, there is no footpath running along the northern side of Woodrolfe Road. There is one on the southern part, and there is a crossing proposed here. The only thing I can say in relation to that is that Highway Authority did not object to that. It did not raise an objection in terms of like their proposal in relation to pedestrian crossing.
Sorry, did you say there is a crossing? Do you mean like a zebra crossing, pelican crossing, something like that, or just a place where people might cross the road?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. Yes, that's basically it. Yeah, there's not going to be a zebra crossing. No.
Okay, thank you. So that remains a concern to me then, about the crossing, given the target audience for the homes. Can I ask about security? These homes won't have any private gardens around them, and the whole site won't have a perimeter fence or gate or whatever. There's reference in here about, or the National Planning Policy Framework refers to the need to create safe spaces. And I can see something about the applicant has been in contact with Essex Police designing out crime, but I'm not really clear what suggestions have come out of that and whether they've been taken up by the applicant, please. Thank you.
Sorry, please.
Through you, Chairman. Yeah. The proposal, as it has been submitted, does not include any fencing or boundary surrounding it. So it's going to be there is no boundary treatment per se to make it an exclusive development like outside. to protect it in a way that you're suggesting. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm not particularly saying that there should be boundary fences. I'm just saying, given that there aren't, I'm wondering what became of this Essex Police designing out crime conversation. Did they make any recommendations? Have those recommendations been taken up, please?
Yeah, so through Chairman here, they're just encouraged. They can just encourage the applicant to get in touch with them to provide advice in terms of safety and security. But that's what it is, basically.
Okay, so it's just an encouragement, but no real statements or changes to the design or anything like that. Thank you. Can I ask, please, about flooding? Councillor Simon Plater from Tollesbury Parish Council has referred to flood risks. Would you be able to make some comments on his statement, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. What I can say is that the Environment Agency has responded that the site is located within flood zone 1, so they do not make any bespoke comments because it's not within a flood zone from their perspective. We did not receive an objection from the lead local flood authority. They were satisfied with the submissions of the applicant within their flood risk assessment in terms of how they will manage the surface water. We have had concerns raised from our environmental health team, the specialist, who, based on experience and data, they advised us that there are surface water issues and they are aware that the site floods. So what has been agreed is that the applicant has agreed, if the application was to be approved, to provide within the site the attenuation basin, but also off-site contribution to improve the situation with the flooding. Obviously, given that the proposal is for refusal, this cannot be secured because this would have to be through a Section 106 agreement.
Thank you for that. I must say that, I mean, I can see the official response is, oh, well, it's in flood zone 1, so that's okay. But this is the same Environment Agency that couldn't find the key to our floodgate a few years ago. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because we've got officially what we've been told and then what we in Tollesbury know to be happening on the ground. And quite a number of different people around the village who know this and have lived in Tollesbury all their life have approached me with serious concerns about the flood risk here. And the last thing we really want to be doing is building houses that in 50 years' time are uninhabitable or that are affected sometimes by flooding. So that really does concern me. Thank you. I might have some more questions in a minute, but I'll keep quiet for a minute.
Come back to you. Sorry, I've just got a quick question, Mr. Lee. Could a deferral allow us time if members were minded to sort out 106s and what have you? Or not if it's not going to change your recommendation? Well, we can't actually condition it, but we can delegate it. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lee,
it'd be
please.
no different with like any traditional major application. If you're up for approval, you'd have heads of terms, and then it's for officers to sort out the, for want of a better word, nuts and bolts on the actual.
Okay, so we could delegate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Some of my questions have sort of been answered. I'd like to know the height of sea level it is there. And although it does flood, what conditions is he going to do or the developer do to alleviate that? I do like the site. I think it's a nice layout down there. But the only thing is it's quite a long way to the doctors. Quite a steep walk up the hill. That's the downside of that. And affordable housing and for people over 60, is there a way of conditioning it that when they come up for sale, can you sort of someone who in their 40s or 50s, you can say no, you can't have it? Is that? Thank you.
Through you, Chairman. What would normally be the case, obviously, we can condition a property with an age cap in relation to the discount sales. What happens is you would do the Section 106, you'd require the marketing, and then you'd have the percentage reduction. So they'd be capped so that that reduction is passed on in perpetuity. So it's not a case if the first buyer gets a discount, then from then on, you know, it's, yeah, so it's retained in perpetuity through the Section 106. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I have got Councillor Morgan, then I'll come back. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
And welcome. Sorry.
Oh, yes, thank you very much.
Put that at the
Indeed.
beginning. Councillor Morgan is our new representative of Wickham Bishops and the Woodhams. So welcome.
In Council Virgil. My question really is related to the question of 106 agreements. They were mentioned. There isn't one in place at the moment. Is it proposed there to be one? There is. Right. And what are the terms? Have those terms been agreed yet, or where are we in putting that together?
Yes.
Through you, Chairman. Yeah, the terms suggested by the applicant are within the officer's report.
Right.
They are on. Let me just give you the. They are on pages 44 and 45 of the report. Is under developer contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on, there was a very moving statement from, I think, Mr. Hope regarding, obviously, his wish to sort of be able to stay in the village. But I'm just wondering, how are we going to, obviously, when that his or anybody else's period of occupation ends, are you going to be able to pass that on to in terms of their will or sale, or how is that going to operate?
Through you, Chairman. Obviously, if it's your property, you pass it on, but through your will, etc. But it wouldn't mean you'd be able to occupy it if you were under the age capacity.
Right. But would you obviously, if you inherited it in that particular way, and therefore when they will occupy it, would you be able to let it out to somebody?
Rent it out to someone who's over the age.
Would they have to satisfy the occupancy position?
Yeah, there'll be the occupancy restrictions in relation to age and also income.
Right. Well, in terms of the income, how is that? How are you going to be able to police that? What's the way of being able to sort of? So somebody's going to have to sort of produce evidence of what they're being.
Well, there'd need to be a mechanism likely to, in relation to who would manage the sales of that, which normally a reg provider would deal with. Or even if they're sold, sometimes they're dealt with through a management organisation, and that would be something that would need to be required and confirmed through the Section 106 agreement. As I said, you would normally pick a figure, and obviously that would be somehow agreed to increase. Obviously, 10 years' time, the pension will be larger. So that's what I think in the report explains. It's been suggested is the average for the east of England, isn't it? I think. Yeah, and obviously that's one of the concerns we've stated is that doesn't really necessarily relate to Malden specifically enough, and also does it being the average really meet the people that need affordable housing? That's one of the concerns we've raised as a consideration, and obviously members can not have that concern if they don't wish, but that's one of the concerns we've had is actually does that figures that they're proposing meet the people that need affordable housing rather than people that could meet market housing if they so wish. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor White? Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor White who hasn't had a go yet. And then I'll go round to the beginning again because I know Councillor Durham.
Yeah, I have to say I'm generally in favour of retirement villages and retirement homes. But although I'm looking at this plan, in my experience of very elderly relatives, they can't walk very far and they're not very able. Am I right in thinking there's no car parking spaces outside every single dwelling? Because it just seems a bit bizarre that it's elderly people's housing and they've looks like to me on the drawing they've got to park the cars and then walk quite some distance to their houses. That's the first.
Through you, Chairman. Some of them are provided outside, obviously, the houses. Like these are in relation to those, but then you've got like houses such as this one or these here that they have undercroft parking. This is an example I'm giving you. Undercroft, so basically under a roof. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's good because that raised that one. And with flooding, if it's flood zone 1, it shouldn't be flooding. Is there flooding history there? Because it should be high enough that it doesn't. So that's one. And I also think that there really does need to be an on-demand pedestrian crossing, as Councillor Stevens came up with.
Yes, sorry. The thing about that is that's a highways matter and it's not in their land ownership. And so, you can't make the applicants do something they actually can't do no matter how much they want to. Sorry, did you have something to add to that? I'm sure you could put it better.
Yeah, it's in relation to your point about surface water. It's slightly different in terms of flooding. Surface water, a site could be within a critical drainage area, and it could have potentially surface water issues. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be within a flood zone 2 or 3. Yeah, which it isn't, as we've already said.
There has historically been a lot of surface water flooding down there, but whether that can be solved with the right suds, I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but that's the whole point of suds, as long as they do what they're supposed to do. Councillor Durham, you wanted to...
Well, I just really wanted to come partly to assist Councillor Morgan. My mother-in-law lives next door at Oncehaven, and the elderly person next door died, left it to her son, who doesn't fulfil the criteria, so he's not allowed to live in it. And I'm assuming that's the same situation. And again, on the parking, actually next door, which is exactly the same sort of scenario as here, very few of them actually still drive. So there's not a huge. I think there's probably more parking per capita there. I'll keep my powder dry on that one. But that's just wanted to make that point for the assistances.
Councillor Morley.
So
We're working on it.
just one last. So at some point there will be houses or building on here anyway. Is that roughly? Isn't it? That's what I mean. So I do like the layout. That's what I'm fighting against. Yeah, it is. It does seem rather nice to retire. I'd like to retire there. Seriously.
Through you, Chairman, but what I'd say, Councillor Morley, is I wouldn't know if you'd meet the requirements of actually being able to get a unit, because well, no, that's the point. If you can afford it, you wouldn't be able to. That's the point. That's the point, isn't it? So, but what I'd say is, will there be development on this site? Well, I think we're struggling not to allow a form of development, and it isn't, as the officer put, we're not objecting to the principle of development on this site. It's coming down to the quantum of development over such a small part of the site is really what the layout, some concerns in relation to certain designs. Yeah, basically, it's the quantum and layout that is the concerns with this scheme, not the principle of it, is the height. And then when we come to the balancing exercise, officers are recommending that the harm significantly outweighs the benefit. So it's not the principle, it's quantum, layout, appearance, etc. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Keys.
Up to putting proposals forward?
You can do, but I've got a couple of comments. I mean, I accept the principle of development is there, and unless something conditions change drastically with flooding and so on, and tidal, and who knows? But we are where we are now, and I don't see why anyone wouldn't get outline application if they permission applied again. But I am concerned about the distance from the village, and I am concerned about the large numbers, and I'm concerned about the flooding. But I'm not an engineer, and it's no one cares what I think. Basically, it's down to the Environment Agency, isn't it? Sorry, I'll just let Councillor Stephen come back, and then if you have a proposal,
I have a proposal.
we'll see if it's seconded.
Thank you. I've probably got a few more questions and then a whole raft of comments, and nobody will go home tonight because I've been reading and reading and reading about this, and I still feel utterly divided. I really do feel divided, but I've got some more questions.
Well, strictly speaking, you get 3 minutes.
I know. So I'll just be quick. Right. Can I confirm that whilst there is an income limit of, I think it was 30,000 or 31,000, there's no capital asset limit? Is that correct, please?
Through you, Chairman, yes, that's what's suggested. Again, that was one of the concerns raised by officers.
Thank you. So somebody could sell a £2 million house in Tollesbury and they've got an income of 25,000, they're over the age of 60 and they're in and they get the discount and they pocket the difference. So that seems a bit strange to me, but you know, they might form an orderly queue, everybody. Am I right also in thinking that these figures are still correct, are they, that we have a surplus of 426 affordable homes in the district and that affordable homes should be 75% rented, which would not be the case here? Thank you.
Again, through you, Chairman, yes, this is what the local housing needs assessment suggests, that there is a surplus of this type, sheltered type of accommodation, affordable, not market. And the split to be policy compliant, yes, it should be 75 rented, 25 sales.
Right, so I think that demonstrates quite clearly that we don't need this in the district. So it's not as if we could say, well, let's accept such a dense population of houses because we really, really need this. We don't. So that does seem a great conflict to me. It is very dense. It's much denser even than the one that was refused because of density. And when you look at the planning inspector's comments last time, it was all around the density, the grain, the scale, and I don't think any of those things have changed. So I think that it would get rejected for the same reasons again at appeal if it went that far. And last time there was no proposal to get rid of any woodland, and this time there's a plan to get rid of woodland, which seems to be even more detrimental. I'll let someone else have a go.
I'd actually be happier if, I'm not saying I would necessarily support it because I can't, but I'd be happier if there was a lot more rented and a certain amount of just straightforward market. It makes it that. It's, you know, it would have to come back as its own application, but it would save an awful lot of these complications. That it's a thought from a non-professional. Councillor Keys, you want to, if you still want to put a proposal?
Yeah, I'd like to put a proposal that we go for this properly. Yeah, I'd go against the officers.
Right, now we need reasons for refusal that address.
Knew that's coming.
For approval that address all the reasons given for approval, and we also need some suggestions as to. Okay, unless there's anything you had in mind, we would delegate to officers. Ditto the 106. Yeah, but if there was anything you had in mind, like external lighting, I would certainly want that. Well, we haven't got a proposal until we've got the reasons for approval. It isn't a proposal we can debate.
Well, could I put a proposal forward that we defer it and see if they can get some of the issues raised by officers in relation to rented or market value or anything else? Could we defer it for another month? I'd be happy to put forward that proposal that we defer it and see if we can get something more acceptable.
I'll second it then. I'll second that then.
Well, yes, that's a proposal. Anyone second Councillor White's? Okay. Well, let's put that to to the vote. That's the first motion we've actually got on the table. So those in favour of deferral for further further communication with the officers and whatever is required in the way of changes, those in favour? Anyone against deferral? Okay, so we have deferred. Did you get the numbers all right on that, Ms. Bird?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, lovely. So hold on. Any other items of business that the chairman decides are urgent? You'll be grateful to hear there aren't any. So I close the meeting with thanks to all officers, all members, and all members of the public, and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. I close the meeting at 8:31.
Well done. Thank you, mate. Thank you, councillors.